What are you guys' thoughts on streaming on MUME?
Oh, you mean like the rule of against it, so to
Yeah.
speak? I think the rule is completely ineffective. I think when at any given time, tons of people are on Discord, tons of people are on chats. Um, I, I mean, maybe like what you if you log in, you're streaming. I guess if you use the who command, you might reveal who's on. But then also like if you're playing with people and that gets leaked, like I don't know. I just think it just feels obscure and kind of futile and greatly inhibits like a possible like channel, a possible vector for sharing the game and
Hmm.
promoting the game. So I think whatever benefit is being achieved by the anti-streaming rule, I think is not worth it. It's not worth the trade-off.
I understand the need for it, but to agree with Mike, I don't. It's not very easily enforced. I mean, you have people on Discord. I mean, I think everyone's on Discord now. Discord, Skype, historically even IRC. You just going back, you had people on one type of messenger or another, and now you have Group Manager built into mmapper, which means that the gods have no way of monitoring. Even if that didn't exist, it would be trivial for someone like any of us to set something up where your tells are encrypted, so they can't read the content of your tells. I mean, it's very hard to enforce something like that. So I don't know. It's not an easy solution.
Yeah.
Maybe it makes sense to have a rule where if you're in a group and you're streaming, you should disclose that to the group somehow. Like you shouldn't group with people and stream what's happening without telling them or something. But other than that, like, what's the problem? Like, so long as it's a conscious decision, so what?
Yeah, I've got two big main problems with the streaming issue right now. Number one being that okay, at this point there's so few players, you're really not screwing over anybody. Like, okay, maybe one person gets pissed and gets killed because of it. Like, but there's four people online, so okay, really. And then two, um, I I can't think of a single game that I would want to play with my friends and share with my friends that I at the same time can't be like, no, actually you can't watch it. Like I can't show it to you. I can't,
Yeah.
like that. I'm sorry. In today's climate, that's just that is unfun. And kind of going back even to the whole Discord and Skype thing, like I don't have a problem with that either. Like the reason that I believe it was set up originally that you're supposed to talk in game is because of I don't know there was limitations back then on how you could talk to people with whatever software was available. But these days, like that is not a fun mechanic. Having to type stuff is not a fun mechanic when you could say it, which every other modern game does. Like that should be okay. Obviously, Mume's not going to have dedicated servers for listening, like like streaming audio, like other games do. But it shouldn't be discouraged to use your voice in a game where you're playing with friends. Like that's a that's a good thing, not a bad thing. Um,
It's a complex issue though, because uh, there's pros and cons. A pro might be is that it makes it easier to advertise a game and be more competitive with other games. I mean, the con might be that for some people you're increasing the barrier to entry, because it's a bit like the mmapper thing. It's like 90 something percent, like 99 we'll say percent of people use mmapper. So if you don't use mmapper, you are kind of at a disadvantage. So if you could argue that if you're not using, if everyone but you is streaming or communicating out of band, then you're at a disadvantage at that
but
point.
that's every
So
game ever. If you log into
that is
Modern
every
War,
game.
Call of Duty
So,
and you're not on voice comms with whoever's on your team, like yeah, you're at a
mhm.
disadvantage. Go figure.
Also,
Yeah,
I'd say
yeah.
back in the 90s, back, to reach back into the early history, the early dawn of time. Um, there were always labs, like literally people in their,
Hmm.
university computer lab, and that's a lot of early playership spread that way. And I know it's funny if you look online and you search for MUME maps, there's these ancient maps which they've been scanned in. They've been scanned in, and they were generated with a computer program, but not. It's not a visual map. It's like the rooms are like the letters, the name. So road to Grey Havens would be RTGH. So it's like a grid of acronyms of the room names that shows like the arrows of how you transition, and someone has drawn a lot on them. And those are like 90s era maps.
Hmm.
And what I know from people I know who talked to back then, like people would play in labs and would distribute those maps. Like there'd be a physical hard copy of that map in the lab that you could use in a few of these labs in Northern Europe or whatever. So like the lab advantage and the map advantage has always been there. Peter, before you were born, Peter, there was a
Yeah.
map. There was a physical map advantage that some.
I'm
So
offended.
um, I just don't like. I think that's always going to be there. I think external,
Yeah, I agree.
those things are always going to be there. And for some limiting
For a thing,
someone
it's
who
like,
wants to stream and promote the game as like a kind of an obscure, arbitrary way to mitigate something like cross spying or something. I don't know. It just feels so. It feels so. It feels futile. It feels futile to me.
it's
Yeah.
it's a losing battle, basically.
It's
There's so many
also
ways to cheat. There's so many ways to cheat.
it's
Like,
also just a question, I think, of priorities at this point. Will there be disadvantages and advantages of the game? Absolutely. Could it make the game more unbalanced? Absolutely. But our primary, in my opinion, right now, if you perfectly balanced the game, you made the game absolutely balanced right now, and it was magic, you would still not have a lot of players. I don't think there would be a lot of people coming back like, oh, look at that, it's balanced now. People would not. That wouldn't fix the game. What we need to
yeah,
fix is the fact that there's no players. And so if
right.
that means, yeah, it's a little unbalanced, and sometimes you can get absolutely shanked. That sucks. But we've got 30 new players. Like, that's a worthwhile trade to me.